countdown?
3, 2.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
One.
Count down when everyone says I'm willing to count down.
Okay.
Like
So
you're just assuming I have a very fast MacBook computer, but I don't. Okay.
Okay. So countdown to the countdown.
I'm recording.
Can you hear me now? Yes, it does.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Excuse me, my crayon is a monkey. If I'm conversation.
Taking some interest in learning a bit more about technology, philosophy, and I like to.
I'm an educator. Absolutely. We're gonna stay anonymous.
That's a cop out.
The binary's gone. I thought jingle was like Dutch for cheers.
Yeah.
Hi.
Welcome to
Hello. Welcome to Beyond Binary.
Giga. Go on, Chris. You kick it off.
Hi, welcome to Beyond Binary Thinking. On today's episode, death and other cheerful topics.
Looking forward to it.
Oh, you are, aren't you? You're a
Me
bit
too,
of a
actually.
death nerd. I saw how many books you've got.
Yeah. It's a fascinating subject. Yeah.
Yeah, I did slightly less preparation. I watched the Justin Timberlake movie, Time.
That's a great. I actually really
It
like
is
that.
an underrated exploration of the topic.
It's a very
It's a
good
little bit.
excuse to watch Justin Timberlake movie.
And I
He's
spent
a good dancer, isn't he?
6 hours watching Death Note with Korean subtitles.
Nice.
I mean,
I did.
were
I
you
did
reading
daily
the Korean
preparation.
subtitles?
Yeah, I mean, what else you know about subtitles? Weirdo.
What was the dub in though? What language was the dub in?
Oh, I mean, it's the original Japanese. I mean, if you guys haven't seen Death Note, then
So you're watching it in Japanese with Korean subtitles?
Yeah.
For the full weeboo effect.
yeah.
Good.
Is it better?
I don't know.
Did you learn anything about death?
No, I just realized how easily that was just derailed. I apologize. I learned nothing about death. I don't know anything about death. It's a huge mystery. It's the reason why I wanted to be a part of this podcast, to listen to clever people talk about it. Because the only thing I know about death is that I'm afraid of it.
Yeah, I was going to start with that. Like, who's scared of it?
I don't think I am.
Sometimes.
Yeah, me neither.
When I'm living right, I reckon I'm like able to avoid thinking about it. But do you know when you get really bad turbulence on a plane and you've been just living your worst life for the last 3 months? And that's when I'm like, oh God, no, not now. Not now. I want to die at least vaguely thinking I'm a good person.
I kind of get the opposite. It's weird. It's like when I'm in that moment in the
When I'm
airplane,
killing
like,
kids, I feel alive.
when I'm in that moment of like, or like in a car. I've been in quite a few moments in a car where I've come like super close to having like a head-on collision, right? And in that moment, it's just like, it becomes like pure clarity. I don't know, and it's just like pure in the moment, like adrenaline. I don't know. And then it's not fear. It's just like,
But
it's like a really cool.
Is that the adrenaline, or is that really
Probably.
dying?
Or
Right?
just,
'Cause-
or even just turbulence, where like it's like I know I'm not going to die. Well, I might do, but I know no, I'm not. And I'm like, okay, well, if I die, well, that'll be it. That's all right.
So
If it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
I wonder, for the ones that are afraid of dying, is it the fear of actually being dead, or is it the fear of the process of dying?
I
cause of
think
death,
it's
I think.
the fear of not being alive anymore. The fear of like, okay, that's it. That was the time you were given. Thanks. That you can't do anything else now.
I mean,
is-
there's all these Greek philosophers who are like, yes, but it's just another stage of life, and you don't cry when your baby's no longer an infant, do you? Haha. But you're like, yeah, but death's pretty final. Like of all the life stages, it's
Wow.
quite.
To be fair, we don't know, right? We don't
That's the
actually know.
point. Though.
what
There's no
happens.
coming back from it, right? Unless you're a vampire
But no, but
or a zombie.
This is very both you and Toby are saying is very much the modern scientific approach, right? What are you? You're basically a collection of
Materialist,
molecules
yeah.
that created cells. Those cells are creating life. And once you die, the cells will deteriorate. The atoms.
Yeah,
will
we're
fall
an
apart, the
electric
molecules will fall
circuit
apart, and whatever makes up you ends up existing, right? Now, that is the scientific view, which a little bit nihilistic, hedonistic view of it. But if you look at pretty much every religion, all religions have a afterlife. All of them discuss something after death.
It's the ultimate scam, isn't it? Like, if you give me your money and your virgins now, I promise there'll be some rewards, sweet afterlife rewards waiting for you.
But
And
it's
really
like
hard
if
to
you're
get
a good
refund.
person.
You can't be like at 150, like, excuse me, religion, I want my money back. That was a waste of time.
But it makes you be a good person. So, like, do you know what I mean? Ah, that's annoying. I live my life really
Scam.
well. Like, they scammed me into being a really moral,
Waste
virtuous
of a
person. How
Sunday.
annoying.
Well, that's very much the Judeo, and not even the Judeo, but very much the Christian Islamic view of afterlife, right? A reward in afterlife. Would not say that all religions view afterlife as being something that is a reward for what you did in life. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's a very the two viewpoints I've heard so far are pretty cultural centric, right? Scientific centric or Christian centric. I think there's a lot more interpretations, but what I do think is very interesting is that there is really no. I wonder if there is a religion without death. Like if you had eternal life, would there still be a need to create a religion? I think they're all around explaining this unexplainable thing, giving meaning to death is sort of what's giving rise to most religions.
So Buddhism has reincarnation, but it depends whether you take it literally or not, right? So there are some interpretations where Buddha was just saying that life is all interconnected and your consciousness of yourself is a mirage. So do you ever truly die because what is life sort of thing? Or people literally now go, oh no, next time in the sequel of this movie, I'll get to be a dog, which will be fun. So
Well, for that, the difference between Atman and Anatman is very important. Atman can be translated as the soul. And Hinduism before the time of Gautama Buddha was an Atman religion. So they believed in the soul and the soul reincarnates. It's kind of like, yeah, there being a sequel. And what Buddha sort of changed to that, and what is one of the big influences of Buddhism, is that for him it was anatman, it was non-soul. So there is not a soul that is you that reincarnates into the next life. You are basically in this kind of the scientific way, your collection, where the science says you're a collection of molecules and atoms, and Buddhism says you're a collection of aggregates, and these aggregates create what you are. Now, I'm not a Buddhist scholar expert. In my layman view, you can dub it as sort of your fear is an aggregate that creates you. Your creativity is an aggregate that creates you. Your desire is an aggregate that creates
your personality.
you. And those elements, well, personality still for me maybe a bit too soul-like, but these sort of elements that create you, they will return and manifest themselves again.
in a sense, haven't we died many, many times though? Think back to who you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, who you'll be in 30 years. Like there's an argument that every 7 years, every atom in your body has changed, right? Like the idea is that you're always dying. You can't step in the same river twice, right? Both the river and the person has changed.
That's kind of how I see the like reincarnation, more as like an allegorical tale than as a, literal
waiting for a sequel
truth,
to the movie to play.
It's like like I have no idea like what happens after you die, but like that makes sense. It's like every time you wake up, every time you go to sleep, it's like you kind of die and you're born again and you get a new chance, to live in a certain way or another way. Or
quite funny though if you wake up bitter and grumpy and frustrated though, if that's your reincarnation, when you wake up and you're like, I'm already not enjoying this life. Toby, you look thoughtful.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll say something thoughtful.
No. I was just thinking about something completely different. I had a joke, but I missed the jump off point for it.
Time, like life, is fleeting, like jokes.
No, it's just something that you were talking about earlier, Chris, about how, and also imagine as well, how in religion, like the reason why we can't have religion is because of death. without death, would there be a need for religion? And I think this is a theme that's explored by the philosopher Rick Gervais in his The Invention of Lying, the classical text, where he invents religion just as a way of mediate an old woman's fears as she's lying on her deathbed, and he just accidentally invents religion in a world where religion doesn't exist, which I think is the deepest part of that movie.
It's very funny. Highly recommend that one.
Well, and it makes sense, right? Because I mean, Toby, you're afraid of dying because, as you said, there's going to be nothing, right? I think the Western scientific explanation is scary as fuck, right? Something you hold so dearly, your consciousness, and it's gone, and there's nothing afterwards. Doesn't have any purpose afterwards anymore.
And I've heard the rational attempts to alleviate that fear. It's like, well, you won't be around when you die, so you won't feel it. And, you know, it wasn't scary or painful before you were born. So you should feel the same way about passing. But again, my point is, yeah, fine, that's just nice words, but it's still nothing. And I like something. And like I say, I think the best thing to not fear death is, well, like taxes, you can bitch and whine about it, but it's still going to happen. So you might as well not waste your life being like, yes, we know you're going to die, dude. We're all going to die. Like, it's the point of it.
Well, we're all going to die is actually quite an interesting observation, because indeed the ephemerality of our lives is the key thing that everyone shares. Mm-hmm. Right? We can be so different, come from such different cultures, such different backgrounds, such different thoughts, but the one thing we all know for sure that will all happen to us is that in this form we will pass.
Unless
eternal.
Some of us, like myself, are immortal. I mean, I think
that's a tough life. That's a tough life, mate.
It's that.
I would not want that.
What
are you going to do with your time?
It's a philosophical thing of pretty much all of us. We live as if we are the protagonists in a story where we can't die.
And so far, we've been proven right. Like,
I don't know about you guys, but like I think about death quite often, not in like a sad way, like, oh no, this person died or that person died, but like there's this old idea of like memento mori. Right, like I'll have something which reminds you that you're going to die, and then that sort of contemplation of death, rather than just sort of thinking about death, that sort of contemplation of death makes you go, well, yeah, I'm going to die, so I may as well like stop worrying about this or that, or do that thing that I wanted to do that I was like, should I do it or I don't know? Yeah, just do it because you're going to die, so you may as well go for it.
I was putting out some shelves just now before recording. And I was drilling right next to the plug. And I know I should probably switch off the electrics because this is really stupid. Yeah. Like, or at least I should use one of those little things so I find out where the electrical lines are.
Yeah,
but in the end, it's like kind of, I'll drill a bit carefully. And if I die, fuck it.
No. But you can't only die a little bit though, right? Like,
yeah.
Next time, maybe turn the power off.
But however, I'm still because
and then you went. Was that your memento mori? Is that what you're saying?
Because I am the protagonist of my story, and I am immortal. Obviously, I'm not going to get killed just because I'm putting up some shelves. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, there is an interesting point there, well hidden, but there definitely is, like running up against our fascination with our own mortality and how much of our behavior it sort of dictates. Like there's this real thing where, like, was it 18 to 25-year-old men just become really, really, what's the opposite of averse? Like eager to risk their lives as much as possible. Like you get it with people joining gangs, committing crimes, like buying a gun that they have no idea how to use safely, like drink driving. It's actually a bit younger than that. It's desperately trying to impress someone, and our sort of masculinity is tied up to how brave you are and how fearless you are in the face of the obvious risks that surround our fragile bodies. Yeah, so between, I think, 12 and 20-year-old, the biggest chance of dying is by accident.
And the chance to die by accident from between 12 and 20 goes up by like 600% if you're with more than one person in the same age group.
If you remember trying to get
boy.
Yeah, if you try and get insurance as an 18-year-old boy, companies are just like, nope, like not interested. You will pay 4 times the value of a car just to be insured for a year.
So can I do a little round the table, right? Like what are your how many personal experience have you all have had with death in your own surrounding?
Who wants to go first? Yeah, let's deep dive. Go for it, Finn.
I'll go first. Yeah. So for me, like close deaths. One of my friends died. He was quite young. That was quite a difficult thing. I think harder than just normal death. You know, I'm doing the air quotes. When people die, someone dies of old age. For example, my grandma died as well recently, aged 93. And that was very different to when my friend died some years ago, who was 26. And my father as well passed away. And apart from that, sort of a few grandparents and more distant relatives I wasn't so close to. So yeah, probably. But when I was young, I never really had any kind of dealings with death. Probably when I was about 16, my Dutch granddad passed away. But I was busy doing my exams and I sort of was told to focus on that. So I didn't really, it wasn't really a thing. So yeah. What about the rest of you? What are you, Chris?
Mine's an odd one. So I didn't have any funerals. Anyone I know died till probably a few years ago. I somehow managed to avoid it for decades. And the first couple were the oddest, actually. So I have a strange relationship with my grandparents. One side I was very close to, the other not at all. Likewise, one of the first people I knew who died was, enemy is overstating it, but just some guy who I'd always argued with, and he got drunk and threatened me once. And for some reason, I always found that harder than sort of an elder grandparent you were fond of, where it was just nice memories. I literally, in the case of my granddad, got to say goodbye to him in the hospital. It was very the way it should be, right? Like he said what he needed to say to me and then was like, okay, I'm in pain. I'd really like to die now. And you're like, okay, yeah, well, we had a brilliant nurse who was like, cool, so we can just give him like loads of morphine and then this problem will be taken care of. We were like, sounds good, let's do that. And that was so much nicer than the weird ones where you had a bit of regret and a strange relationship with the person.
Were you there when he died in the bed?
Yeah.
So you saw him like through his last breath.
Yeah, and that was much less haunting or strange than I ever imagined it would have been. Like,
I think closeness brings that, or takes away that fear, and brings the experience more healing to you. Yeah.
I was enormously close with him growing up. I was at boarding school. That was my closest relative. So I spent more time with him between the age of 11 and 18 than probably my parents. So yeah, it was emotionally charged, but it just felt natural and okay. I think being surrounded by loved ones, there's a reason why I'm a big fan of like religion and its role in community. Having that ceremony as a bookmark, I think civilization needs those. There's a reason why we have christenings, weddings, and funerals. Like they're big, charged end of chapters in our life that it's nice to have a ceremony around and congregate around and do what the funeral I went to for my granddad, he would have gone to for his granddad, sort of thing. There's something that completes the circle there.
Yeah, I kind of almost envy that kind of nice bit of closure, because 5 years ago, 6 years ago, my youngest brother, 2015, passed away, and I think he was about 17. And we don't know if it's a suicide or an accident yet, and we'll probably never will. We'll never find out. But his body was found at the bottom of a cheddar gorge, and he'd basically on his way to school. Jumped off the bus, got onto the bus, go back to Cheddar, walked up the hill, and then found his body 3 days later. So we don't really know what happened. Presumably suicide, but no notes, no nothing. And it's that shook the family up quite horribly, because there's the sense of like not knowing what happened. There's that kind of everyone needing someone to blame, or especially like within our family, my mum needed definitely someone to blame. She'd been sort of struggling with depression for decades at this point. And so not hugely surprising, this the death of her youngest son eventually drove her over the edge as well. So she definitely committed suicide 2 years later, which is again quite horrific. And I think that's the time I got most. My little brother dying really shook me up. I still feel bad about it today. But it was reading the autopsy from my mum's death, which had a very visceral reaction, reading sort of the damage that she's done to herself because she hung herself. And yeah, just really upsetting read these things. And I think more upsetting than if I'd been there. To be able, because everything's just happening in your head, like seeing your grandfather pass away, it's something you're processing as it happens. When you're only reading these reports, like both from my brother and from my mum, when it's only like in written form, your mind fills in all the other blanks, and it's pretty horrible.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah. Especially if I compare the story about your brother with story from a friend of mine who died in the mountains of Tenerife. And he was found a day later by another friend of mine. They were living in the same community. And the friend who found him had the feeling that something was off, because the fact that someone would go mountain walk, maybe he'd slept in the mountains, come back some other day, that was expected. But my friend had the feeling something was off. He went walking and found him lying underneath a ridge, probably slipped and fell. And then he called for help, and then he climbed down and he sat with the body. And he told me that there was such a beautiful view and such a beautiful sundown that he had a very intense, beautiful, bittersweet, beautiful feeling being there with it was of course very sad that his best friend had departed, but at the same time having this closeness in such a beautiful moment, it gave him a lot of peace as well, with the fact that it had happened. So I can imagine how not having that closeness and that immediacy.
It was obviously we went to like my brother's funeral, but I was one of the we'd call like pallbearers, casket bearers. So there's that sort of weight on your shoulders. I was there with my brothers, all carrying him in, which is good. But the day before, we had an opportunity to see the body itself, and I couldn't really bring myself to do it. I kind of regret it now, but
I think it's natural. It's natural to be like, if I'd have done that, then that would have been better. But I don't know how to not be a dick saying this, but I don't see what would have made that situation good.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, I don't want to make, of course, Toby feel bad, and you can't go into the past. You can't change what happened in the past, but you have to just accept and live with what has happened. But I do think one of the big lessons that Western culture can get from more traditional societies is that exposure to the dead body is very important in the healing process. In my family, what we've always done is we expose the body for the entire week until the funeral. People can come over, people can sit with the body in a very peaceful, nice space that we create for the body. Both happened to my grandfather, grandmother, my own mother who passed away. And I do think those things are very helpful. And in traditional societies,
to like normalize it.
Yes, because in traditional societies, you're living, of course, in a smaller community, but no one in that community at the age of maybe 10, 12 years old will have not had any exposure to a dying person, right? Everyone will have been there with the entire process, seeing it happen in front of them. And there's less taboo and there's more understanding and it's more in the open.
I think before we get too cultural, because I think, the reason we do a podcast is because it's cheaper than therapy. So I don't want to steer away from the horrific thing Toby just described. But it is interesting that it occurs in many, many cultures, and how we used to have, as you say, I always thought it was weird that you'd go to your colleague's cousin's funeral in the village. You're like, I don't even know this person, and yet you were expected to attend, and that's just how villagers have done it forever. And then when you described it like that, it made sense to me. It's like, yeah, you should always be going to funerals, so it just sort of normalizes. I think there's generally in life a lesson that if you try and look away from something, that's probably not for the best. Like, stare into the light, like fucking face that harsh darkness.
Well, I suppose not every culture, to then go straight back to the cultural thing, not everyone sees it as a harsh darkness. There are several cultures where, death being part of a journey. Technically, Christianity is meant to be like that, isn't it? Like, well, they're dead in a better place now.
But we'll see them in a bit. In the clouds.
Yeah. Although it's always quite dark, isn't it? Like, death is this dark thing, and like, even within a sort of Christian context, I mean, unless this person is going to hell. Yeah.
No, I think this is key though. Before we get too spiritual, and in this culture they think this, and I think Toby's raised the most obvious point, that it is fine to be stoical and philosophical about your own death, and it's interesting to talk about it in general cultural terms, but like it's very hard to just pragmatically face the awful fact that people who we love and whose lives we love, that ends. I don't have warming words for that. I know why hundreds of thousands of comforting things have been written, and I don't think we can deny. Fuck, that's brutal. I can say things to reassure myself. I don't know what to say now to Toby about his brother and his mother that he's just described. Right? That's why there's professional priests and therapists. Jesus.
But obviously, like the death of my brother was a tragedy because he was 17, and so young people dying is horrible. There's that added thing of you don't really know how he died. It was just like this accident. If it's something else going on, that is a tragedy. But with my mum, I see that as her dying of an illness she's been suffering from for decades. That had been hurting her for a long, long time. And as much as I miss my mum, and again, she was only 51 or 51, I want to say, which is quite young, especially in today's age. And before she got to see her grandchild. Or possible future grandchildren. So there's a certain tragedy in my mum's life as well. But actually, that's the key thing. There was tragedy in my mum's life rather than her death. Her death was like just a tragic footnote at the end of a very long, horrible life for her.
Yeah, I have to echo that, Toby. I totally agree. So with the case of my friend, he was 26, and it is similar circumstances to your brother. I won't go into exact detail, but we're not really sure exactly what happened. And it's kind of difficult to get closure, and you think that's kind of so unfortunate. It's so unlucky and he was such an intense guy, so interesting, so full of life. And so you think, I wonder what he'd be doing today, what conversations we'd be having, And then with my dad, he had suffered from alcoholism, and in the end he had cancer. And then in the end, it was almost like you say, his death was almost like it kind of made sense. In fact, maybe it sort of ended his suffering in a way. So you could view that as like a natural thing, or like it kind of makes sense in a way.
Yeah, well, the through line is it's difficult when it's sort of sudden, when you have regrets and it's unexpected and you're never really sure how to process. But I don't know, like, Merang, on to you, like, is it any easier when you see the car crash coming in slow motion? Like,
I do think it is, yeah. At least from my personal experience with my mother. She had cancer. We knew for an entire year that she had cancer, about for 5 months that it was not going to be solved with any chemotherapy. And we made it the switch about 6 months in, going from trying to save this life at no matter the cost to preparing for what is actually a good death, and how can you depart in a peaceful way, leaving behind the people that you leave behind. And I saw my mother depart after a lethal shot of, I guess, morphine, with very much peace with the process. And that gave me peace as well. And I still miss my mom. That's a different story. That's about me, rather than necessarily my mom's death on its own, because it was her consciousness that departed. And, the fact that I miss her has more to do with my own mental state. And I do think there is a beauty in the fact that lives are temporary, and that death is in a way as well a guidebook for life. I think Finn, you touched upon this as well, right? Knowing that we will die can give us reasons to live and give us peace in life as well. I don't think it necessarily has to be a bad thing. And culturally, I don't want to keep bringing the cultural point in, but culturally, the fact that death is a bad thing is actually quite a recent event, even in the West. The idea of a good death used to be quite prominent. And even just consider like the good of a death, the things that you achieve, for example, your achievements were more important than your life for some people. Right, the legacy.
Your legacy,
yeah.
What's a good death then? Not an autoerotic asphyxiation accident. Like, what are we aiming for here?
No squanching. No.
Obviously, it's to die with weapons in your hand, because that's the only way to reach Valhalla.
Exactly. Everyone knows that's the ticket to Valhalla.
Yeah. Which is what I'm personally aiming for.
Or jihad.
I mean,
well, as soon as that's just imagine that. Is it? I don't know where the joke is from, but it's that sort of the jihadi dies and he wakes up in a Magic the Gathering tournament. It's like, here's your 40 virgins.
I don't know. Maybe some noble death could be something like saving other people. Like sacrificing yourself to save some other people. Do you know what I mean? Like you hear these stories about, like during the Second World War, for example. Stories where people...
We love those stories, don't we? Like I tear up reading them.
Yeah. Like, and people do these sort of heroic acts where they're just like trying to smuggle Jewish people out of countries, and and then finally they get caught, or they create a diversion so that they could get away, and then that gives them up and they get put to death or whatever. I don't know. I guess there can be some nobility in that kind of death, I think.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, but the tragedy
fighting for what's right.
Not many of us will get the opportunity to jump on a grenade, right? Like that's not.
Oh no! What a shame!
Most of us go in a hospital will die, quite old and having lived relatively boring lives.
The real tragedy in modern society is that there aren't enough grenades to jump on.
It's going to be like that episode of Black Mirror, the metal heads one, the one with the robot dogs. And everyone. I mean, I don't want to give it away. Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen that. Pause the podcast for a minute and go and watch it. And they all die, right? They all get killed by this robotic dog. It's kind of just really savage, and you think they're after something really important here, probably some life-saving medicine, or do you know what I mean? Some super, and it's a teddy bear. And you're just like, maybe that will go out with Boston Dynamics robots. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of depressing. But then that's Charlie Brooker, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I only haven't seen that much of Black Mirror yet, which I kind of regret. But,
no,
that's a pretty bad summary. It's worth watching it.
You're good, honestly. First season's brilliant.
I love the first season, and then
it's really good. They're all great.
The one where like choose your own adventure one I thought was fascinating, and it's a really good way that if I was more sort of paranoid schizophrenic, I would literally just my mind would break. But no, I was going to say
the afterlife is the digital afterlife.
Have you guys seen? To talk about there was one about the afterlife called San Junipero, where basically it's about uploading consciousness, and it's like the question is, when you're going to die, would you want to be uploaded to a world where you could carry on living for a while until you decided not to live anymore?
Yes,
and that was a very good one.
Because
you can stay there for as long as you want, right? You could do it for a week or
if it's a choice, if you're not like sort of forced to it.
I imagine you'd be able to terminate yourself. Do you know what I mean? Because it would just be a case of deleting
there's a great Roald Dahl story about and I can't really recall it exactly, but it's A guy dies and his brain is kept alive by a woman inside of a glass jar, and I think he hates the woman or something. And so he's forced to sit there and watch for eternity the things happening around him. And you can't do anything, it's just a brain in a glass jar.
Yeah.
The story is written from the perspective of this consciousness as well. It's a really creepy story. One of the
That's
stories
kinda
that
scary, isn't
freaked
it?
me out the most I've ever read.
So I think that's the key: is are these brains in jars, be they digital or biological, are they still interacting with the real world? Right? Because I think that was my nightmare thinking about this, is that, yes, I do think death gives life meaning, and it's special because it's finite. Why would there ever be a reason to do something today when you were immortal, right? You'd be like, I'll do it tomorrow. Really? Or I don't need to learn things. In 1,000 years, the technology will be good enough that I'll just upload the knowledge to my brain. But can you imagine if, like, we still had people from the 1800s voting and dictating policy and being like, nah, I'm sorry, but you're just never going to convince me on this slave thing. Like, I've made my mind up.
So death is needed for change, then.
I'm sorry, but isn't Jacob's Rees-Mogg already in power?
Proof that this has
He disappeared. He still hasn't reappeared, has he?
Yeah, what? Oh,
Where's he gone?
Something came
hidden him
out and
in
they just
basement.
went like,
Maybe they're filming a new season of Demon Headmaster.
maybe they started hanging garlic in the House of Commons.
So, yeah, I think that would be the key. If we were able to somehow, either through superior medicine or through digital consciousness uploading, prolong life really significantly, like, how much worse would politics infinitely get? There's this idea that the only reason things change isn't because of some bright idea or some, inspiration revolution. Just enough of the old people with stupid ideas leave that the world can finally improve the way everyone's wanted it to for the last 20 years.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. Because like these people say, even if we had like lifespans of say just 500 years rather than say immortality, what would happen is literally just a concentration of wealth and power amongst a sort of ancient super elite.
Is that not what?
This is already what we're doing, though. It's
we got now?
Yeah. So
aren't we
Soylent
prolonging
Green.
life?
I think it's a solution. Sorry to steer this onto politics, but maybe we should just retire people when they reach a certain age, permanently into compost.
Or a nutritious beverage? I don't know.
I feel like we've destroyed Meringue's spiritual chat. Somewhat.
His face is inscrutable, but no.
No, this is it. Like, no, I think the materialistic scientific view of death and life is pretty fucking depressing. So take us out of this black hole.
But yeah, that's because I think you're making it depressing by viewing it from your scientific nihilistic hedonistic perspective, right?
Yeah.
And even then, if you do that, at least look at life as being insignificant also, right? Because really, what you're looking at from a scientific perspective is you have at least, what is it? How old is the Earth? 18 billion years until we go to the Big Bang, right? 18 billion years, quite a big period here, yeah. Then we have. But 80 years of your life here, and then you have infinity of time that goes beyond you, yeah? So it's 18 billion years, 80 years, infinity. Basically, infinity, and a very thin slice of you in between there.
You say that, but is it infinity in front of us, though? Or is there a natural entropy in the universe that's leading us to the end of the universe as well?
Okay, so
I'm not sure
200 billion years here, and then 18 billion years here, and 80 years here, and then maybe something was there before the Big Bang.
Or there could be a big crunch, and then the whole thing's on repeat.
And maybe
loop,
something after. We don't know. But at least what I'm trying to get at is your 80 years there is quite insignificant in the larger picture, And you don't even need to go into time. You can also go into space, right? View a little bit outside of Earth, and you're going to become more and more insignificant also. So maybe all we need to do do is stop ascribing so much significance to everything and everything you're doing, and then death becomes a little bit less of a matter as well.
If you don't take anything seriously, life's a doddle. Sorry, death's a doddle.
That's the dot.
Yeah, I mean, in your view, right? Because I mean, I come at it more from Buddhism, so I do believe in some elements that are reincarnating, and the fact that there is, also in the moment now, everything is manifesting, dying, and birthing at the same time, and yeah, I see death is release, can be released from your suffering through your dualistic consciousness. It's not a bad thing.
But if the universe is finite, then there's no real point to reincarnation either, because eventually there's nothing to reincarnate into. Unless, of course, we're sort of transcending these dimensions that we're living in when we reach death.
Yeah. That is one of the assumptions, yeah.
God, I hope so. It's just,
It'd be interesting to know, won't it, what happens? That's what I always think. There's a lot of fear around death. And for me, it's just kind of curiosity. So when I die, it might be in 10 years, might be 5, might be 50 or 200. I have no idea. But when I go, I'll be kind of like, I wonder what's going to happen. Wonder who's going to be right. Or if it's just going to be something totally different that no one's ever thought of. Do you know what I mean?
So
just kind of curious.
Kevin Smith on the Joe Rogan podcast, a few other people who've had near-death experiences have described how surprisingly calm they were. They weren't.
That's
At
curious.
those moments, they weren't filled with like this fear and terror and just
the opposite.
Just one more latte. It's like, okay, this is happening. Like, there's no fighting it. Like, just accept it and serenely.
A lot of those accounts, have tend to go with some serenity and peacefulness. And actually, I think it's more like, Moraine, you asked the question near the beginning of the episode about the fear, and it's like, is it the fear of the cause of death or death itself? And I think those two things people often conflate. And of course, who's not scared of dying from like cancer or, you know what I mean, like a painful death or being shot and bleeding? But the actual death itself, that moment, I think is not. It's just more curious. I'm more curious about it.
Well, if you're curious, I would recommend try DMT trip.
Well,
right,
I may just do that someday.
So I think it was probably Joe Rogan who first got me onto this theory that a DMT is intensely psychedelic experience that is probably released at the moment we die. So
the moment we're born, the moment we die.
So yeah,
potentially near-death experiences as well.
Come to the light experiences, those visions of your grandfather waiting for you in the afterlife. Are you tripping balls on this amazingly potent psychedelic you have released in your brain at that given point? And the question is whether you're just tripping and it's just a hallucination because they're pumping your body to calm you down for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know the value of that. Or whether like DMT is actually giving you glimpses of the other side. So
try it and judge for yourself. Right? I can't judge for you. I have my own experiences with psychedelics. And is it just your brain chemicals malfunctioning, or is there some deeper multidimensional meaning ascribed to this? I'm not going to be able to answer the question for you. I can only answer it for myself. I have ascribed extra meaning to it, but that's a personal thing.
But Moraine is interesting because in preparation for the show, you sent a photo of The Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman, right? And he, for the viewers who aren't familiar with that book, he's basically a scientist who in the 70s, when DMT wasn't a regulated psychedelic, he was basically doing these psychological experiments, scientific experiments, controlled studies, clinical trials, where he would give experienced, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Moraine, because it's been a while since I read it, experienced users of psychedelic drugs 3 different doses or placebo of DMT, medium, low, medium, high, and then would record basically what they report the trip to be. And there was a surprising amount of coherence between the trips, right? That's what I seem to remember, that a lot of them record a very similar experience of going through a kind of dome and breaking through that dome into another, and then other things would happen. And also like the idea that there are entities, right? That about 50% of the time they reported contact with entities, and there was some similarities between quite a lot of them. More than just would be like for random, if you just got people to write random ideas there might be some crossover, sure, but this was like about 50%, so kind of significant. So that's interesting. That's always piqued my curiosity. Maybe there is something else going on that we don't really know about.
It depends on the combined stories, though, right? Because if it's they all saw the same guy with a beard who spoke with Alan Watts' voice and gave some useful advice, they'd be like, okay, tell me more. If it's like they all saw elves that tried to steal their socks, I'd be like, okay. Like, so how? Yeah, what is the combined pattern of experience with that?
It's like entities that they're convinced actually exist, rather than just patterns or lights or whatever.
It's the elves, though, isn't it? It's what you're.
Yeah, there's like the machine elves. They talk about them a lot.
I mean, machine elves, that is very specific from Terence McKenna. So yeah, maybe everyone that read a Terence McKenna book or has heard from someone that's read a Terence McKenna book will be culturally influenced to see something they'll identify with the concept as elves. I think other people will maybe identify it as angels because they've been culturally exposed to the idea of an angel, and that's their best way of communicating their experience.
There is a group hallucination. This is also, as you say, if people are familiar with the concept, how would I describe it? And then you're trying to describe what you saw, then it would latch on to someone's cultural meme and be like, oh yeah, that would have been an angel that you saw, yeah. So I see why for me, what I'm trying to say is the fact that there's patterns doesn't prove that everyone's seeing the same thing, right? I can see how those things congeal around cultural memes.
But you don't necessarily. There is no proof, and I don't think you need to prove. You can experience it yourself. DMT in pure form, the way Richard Strassman did, they didn't really do it ideally. I mean, he injected people intravenously in a hospital setting, which I don't think is the best setting to have this experience.
Yeah, could you imagine?
This was also one of the
where
things.
Not to go to trip would be a hospital.
Right. And this was something that was reported by the participants, but he's doing a scientific study. He did not really have any other opportunities to do it. But you can go to different places, do an ayahuasca trip. They do them in the Netherlands. They do them in South America. One element that is reported anyway in trips is that even if you don't have what you would call a near-death experience, is that most psychedelics work in a sort of psychological death and psychological rebirth. And there are tribes, for example, in the Ibogaine ritual in Africa, where at some point during the end of the trip, you have to pass through two wooden sticks that are like this. And you're literally getting rebirthed through the uterus at the end of your trip.
That ties into ego death, which is close enough to the topic of this podcast for me to get away with a tangent right now. So
I think it's relevant.
My experience on mushrooms was such that I think I finally got out of my head for the first time. Like both times I did mushrooms, it was enough for me to be like, oh, this whole show isn't all about me. And I just remember at the time being like, I'm just so tired of being in. I just felt I sidestepped my consciousness and was just looking at that monkey brain spinning in a circle. I mean, I'm so tired of that guy. And I never looked back. It changed me forever. Just being like, I don't have to spend my whole life in every interaction with people being like, do you like me? Yeah, but do you like what I just said? Like, I can choose to, but I don't have to do that. And this tying back into what I said before, I think every experience, every learning, a little bit of you hopefully dies. Like you lose a bit you didn't need. You shed the parts of you that you thought were you, but were actually just baggage holding you back.
Mm-hmm. And this can happen in any moment, at any moment, right? You continuously choose how you manifest and what you keep manifesting from the past, or what news you want to start manifesting in yourself. So yeah, the opportunity for death and rebirth are pretty much present in any moment in that sense, yeah.
But it seems to happen a lot on drugs.
We would urge all our listeners to go out there and start clinical trials of DMT.
Well, they might start them again. That'd be the interesting thing, because this research got cut off kind of halfway through almost. and Straussman wrote up what he did so that far, right? But now, you know, there's some, as we talked about in our episode on drugs, right? There's more trials happening now into all these different mind-altering substances, and hopefully DMT will be studied in depth.
If there are any drugs looking to sponsor the podcast, we'll be adding them to our Amazon wish list.
Just a little bit leftish and a little bit pro-druggish here.
Contact us if you have any drugs that you recommend we try out in order to approach a greater understanding of this universe that we live in.
So, which might be a good bridge, that do not do datura. Datura is what is responsible for the actual phenomenon of Haitian zombies, which we all know zombies from the movies, but there are actual scientifically researched zombies in Haiti. There are voodoo cults that poison people with the poison that comes from the pufferfish, fugu. You know what Japanese eat has poison in it. Japanese cut out 99.9% of the poison. Little bit poison is left. Gives you tinting feeling on your tongue, numbness. Keep enough of this poison in you, and you will die or you will become comatose in a state where it's really difficult to discern if you're dead or alive. Well, basically, you look dead. Like any doctor will pronounce you dead, but you're not. You will wake up. And in Haiti, when they wake up, they do this on purpose. Voodoo society is mostly done as a punishment. And then they'll dig you up, and then they put them full of datura, and you basically become a sort of a veggie person, a walking around veggie person. You know,
not a vegetarian, just to clarify.
No.
Yeah, vegetative state. Not much going on inside the brain anymore. You know. And people being buried alive is actually something that used to happen quite commonly, because asserting someone actually being dead is actually quite a difficult thing. We didn't used to have even the term brain dead. We used to assert it by the heart stopping pumping, but that's actually not really a good way to assert it.
Also, I presume you wouldn't put your best doctors in the morgue, right? You'd put them at the other end of the scale. Anyone that got straight C's at med college, you're like, do you want to check if people are dead? Like, that can be your job.
Sure, but maybe even before you get to the morgue, you were already with a good doctor, and maybe that doctor, at least in that time, was misdiagnosing as well. So what graves used to have is a bell on top of the grave with a string, And if you would wake up in your coffin, you could be like, fuck, get the fuck me out of here.
Yeah, because you wake up in a coffin and you go, where's that string for the bell? That's your first thought.
There is the modern version. There's American companies where you can start tweeting if you find yourself awake in your coffin.
You wouldn't have reception down there, though, would you?
Yeah,
which actually brings me to what I would like to ask you guys. So, preferred method of burial. Go.
Method of burial. That's kind of
funeral,
prescriptive.
Funeral. Or preferred funeral, I suppose. Yeah,
I love my granddad. He said, bless him, he goes, whichever's the cheapest. I'll be offended if you spend more than £100. If the council would let me, I think you should bury me in the garden.
Wow.
Which, what I love is it just beautifully, though, made it clear, like, don't argue over the ifs, ands and buts and the details. Don't spend any time stressing about it. And it's true, like, there's nothing worse than, my last wishes. It's like, dude, I wouldn't have done you a favor if you were fucking alive. Now you're gone. I have to go out there and start running errands for you. Fuck off.
But you can't bury someone for £100. It's really expensive.
A bit more pricey.
Like
impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not, again. I mean, I love my mother and all the rest of it. Hopefully she's still listening to this. But we try to go as cheap as possible, and it's not feasible. I mean, as cheap and respectful as possible. And it's not possible. And because I remember like having a discussion with my brothers, like I don't think she wanted to be cremated, and they're like, okay, well, that'll cost you. So it's like, all right, well, cremation it is. Bless her.
Yeah, my dad was cremated too, but he didn't really care. He wasn't really fussed about that. But he mentioned this place. There's a natural. It's like a natural park basically. There's also a burial ground. It's like a natural burial ground. So that's where my friend was buried, and also where we ended up burying my dad's ashes. And it's like by the National Trust, and they maintain this woodland with wildflower meadow, and then they've got different lots. So you go there, and they've got like a parlor, like a what's it called, like an open glass sided place for the funeral that you can hold there, and then you can go there, and it's then, instead of visiting like kind of a grave, in a quite a sort of sad, I don't know, I never really like graveyards, to be honest with you. Instead, you go for a nice walk in nature, and you think you can be close to that person in some sense of like, you think, well, they've returned to nature or something like that, even if they're just gone. And the scientific method and the scientific, materialist thing is true. Well, at least you've got you can sit there and be peaceful with their memories. And
I rather like graveyards. I think they can be quite nice. But then again, we have some really nice ones here in Stockholm. So, there's one.
But none of us have answered the question.
Yeah.
What's our answer to the question?
Yeah.
Well, I think I did. I'm not bothered. Like,
you don't mind.
I think asking for favors after you're done is a bit much.
Okay. So,
what about you, Toby?
Obviously a mausoleum or a tomb.
A tomb.
Yeah.
Ideally some pyramids, big old structures.
Yeah, like a mausoleum, I think, is the mausoleum ziggurat.
And that builds on to what I was saying earlier, right? Your legacy. And I don't think a lot of people actually do fear death. I think they fear that they're not living right. And the end of the chapter is that clear, like, sign that we have not made the most of this finite and rapidly diminishing resource we have in front of us. And so, yeah, the ziggurat pyramid joke is the point that we would quite like to have some adoration and legacy during this.
I think the opposite.
Finite life.
The opposite. I have to disagree with you.
Please
For
do.
me, it's like just a tree. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe just cremate me or bury me under a tree and grow a tree there. And then if people want to remember me, they just come and sit under the tree for a bit. Do you know what I mean? Have a nice relaxing time. That tree will offset some of my CO2 emissions. I don't know.
I mean,
before that, I want to plant a forest though. Before that, do you know what I mean?
That is the beautiful. Even if you're being scientific and materialistic, it doesn't have to be cold, hard, and anti-religion, right? Like,
just go back to where you
come
came.
From energy, you return to energy. And there's this
sort of become part of that tree, or at least some of your atoms will be in that tree.
There's this beautiful moment, I think, where I don't actually find it comforting anymore to think that there are dead immortals looking down from heaven, like, cloud CCTV, watching the living. But what I do find quite comforting is the transfer of information from generations, right? Like, my granddad had a tough old fucking life. He really did. I think he was practically orphaned, and then, desperately poor, and then badly disabled at a young age, but just grew to be nicer than life ever should have made him. And despite being that weird, tough, strange man, passed on some of that love and wisdom to me. And now when I do things that he raised me to do, I don't get comfort from the fact that he's watching me from heaven, but that a piece of him lives on, right? That legacy is, I will forever be a slightly kinder person with less of a chip on my shoulder, because he taught me, Chris, you are the big man. You don't ever need to intimidate or bully someone ever, and fuck anyone that does, right? Like, and likewise, I'm about to have a kid and will raise them with a bit of that knowledge that he probably learned from someone that was kind to him in that life. And so even if you don't believe there's fairies in the garden, I still think you can believe the garden's a beautiful place.
You say that, but speaking as a parent, you're not going to be able to teach your children anything. Children learn from you at moments when you're not actually trying to teach them anything. However, the goal is, of course, like your grandfather, to teach their children, because their children will listen to you.
You got to skip the generation, yeah. What about you, Moraine? For Toby, going back to Toby's question, do you have any? And would you have any preference?
Yeah, I have a very romantic view of being burned on a wooden pile.
Like a pyre.
Bit like the Indian way, on a float on the Ganges, just burning away.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, personally, I don't need myself to have any presence in the world for people to return to, like a graveyard. I don't visit anyone at the graveyard because everyone that I know has been cremated. I can recommend, in case of cremation, aside from, of course, putting the ashes near a tree, what we did is we put my mom's ashes into a glass mainier. And so I can, basically, I have a place for it everywhere.
We're not allowed to do that here in Sweden. You're not allowed to, you're not allowed to keep the ashes, which I found out. It's insane.
Germany is the same. Yeah, Germany, I've heard, is the same.
So with with my brother, we have we have his ashes. Like my father took half of them, my mum took the other half. She did weird things. I'm not going to go into exactly what she did with it, but whatever. With my mum's ashes, they're like we're thinking, well, maybe we'll put her in a stone or something, keep her in. And the funeral people were like, no, you can't just do that. Like, you have to bury the ashes. It's like, what? Oh, no. You're also allowed to spread them. You're allowed to spread the ashes. That'd be fine.
Well, then just do it and screw the
One
rules,
of those
right?
laws that's hard to enforce, though. Like, they don't have someone watching you do it, do they?
Here you go. Yeah, okay,
They give you the
bury them
ashes
then.
afterwards, or not?
If you spread them.
Yeah. But then it's up to you to go wherever you want to go with that.
You
Right?
just take the ashes and run. Yeah. I didn't really think about it. But
No, this is the guy that when the police stop him, get out their phone and be like, so 3 years ago, here's the drugs I did. He wasn't about to
I printed it off for you,
great
actually.
ashes
Yes.
heist. That was actually, honestly, talk about regrets. It was beautiful. My granddad made his death funny intentionally. So one of the things he said is, don't let me die in a fucking hospital. So two main pieces of advice. Number one, bury me in the garden, or failing that, as cheap as they'll let you fucking do it. Number two, don't let me die in a hospital. And when he was, as a lot of old people did, like, he had a cold and then fell, and then it was just, everything sort of circling the drain then. And when the ambulance came, he said, don't let them take me, because I won't leave that fucking place. And then in there, he really was just like planning his escape. He was like, all right, like, I've been studying the rounds. 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Fuck all's happening. Like, that's when we hatch our plan, and we're like, all right, Granddad, we'll have a look at it.
That's just like my dad. Did exactly the same thing. Every time I went to the hospital, he's just planning his escape. Jokes.
my mum did escape from hospital several times, although again,
Yeah, my dad too.
mental hospital rather than normal one. But again, she called me about 10 years ago. Except for like the whole cremation thing, the one set of instructions she did give us was, she called me 10 years ago when I was living in England. She called me from Sweden at like sort of 10, 11 p.m. something, just out of the blue. First thing she says is, Toby, when I die, don't feed me to turtles. And I was like, okay. Apparently she'd been, and this is how she greeted me. Apparently she'd been watching a documentary about in India, I believe, River Ganges being fed to sacred turtles. And she was just adamant that's not how, just don't feed her to turtles. So, okay.
You honoured her wishes.
I
One
did,
presumes.
because turtles are really expensive.
Thailand, they're bloody everywhere.
Yeah, but a trip to Thailand, actually, probably quite cheap, especially from Sweden.
There's a lot of Swedish people in Thailand, I can confirm.
Right? I don't know what it is. They freaking love that place. When like me and my wife went to Thailand for a honeymoon, to completely derail this conversation, and like the only people.
We need to though, right? Like, I think there's only so close you can stare at the sun, and then you need to be like, okay, let's lighten the mood. This is intense conversation, guys.
Yeah, but my wife was complaining that the only people we met in Thailand were Swedes. They were bloody everywhere, and
the Swedish king has a family home there, but he's not allowed to. Apparently, it's against the law for the Swedish royal family to own land abroad. So he just buys houses for his friends on the understanding that he's allowed to stay in the very big room in that house.
It's difficult for Swedish people to own any foreigners to own land in Thailand, I believe.
Yeah, you either lease it or you give it to your ex-wife as a gift, as I did. That was fun.
Yeah, but as my old boss, she only went to Thailand like 2 or 3 times per year, as you do. She really wanted to open up a hotel there, and I would have supported that. I'd go and work in a hotel in Thailand, but she can't because she can't buy land.
You got to go in with the Thai person. Fiddy.
Can't buy land in London either, like so. What you can do?
Yeah. Pretty hard to buy land.
But I really do notice more than any other topic we steered so... It wasn't like a tangent. We'd spent too close looking at the sun and we just had to. Why is death such a taboo? Why is it so hard to approach?
I think for me, it isn't for me though, Chris.
No, and I
feel you two are trying to avoid the conversation the whole time by cracking jokes and going into side tangents. Finn and me are very comfortable with it, can go into it straight away. And I don't think this is a general thing. I think this is a very personal thing. And I think it has to do with the amount of exposure you have to thinking and talking about it. Okay, if you don't talk about it ever, it's very uncomfortable to talk about it. Maybe if you spend more time talking about it and thinking about it, becomes less uncomfortable to talk about it and to think about it. Exposure generally creates comfort, right?
Yeah, I think you kind of just stole my words, Moraine, and I was going to say that I spent just that's exactly the same thing as you. That just maybe what we could do is some takeaway as some homework. I'm a teacher, so I love giving people homework. You don't have to do it, but if you want to do it, you can. It's just once a week, just take 5 minutes and just think about your own mortality. Not necessarily like we've done today, like thinking about people who've died or anything like that, but just I'm going to die one day. I'm not going to be here. And just think about that just for 5 minutes. And maybe over time, then it sort of builds this, I don't know. For me, it's helped. I'm not going to say I'm excited about death, but I'm curious about it. And I kind of weirdly enjoy talking about it. I think you get real deep connection with other humans, But I really appreciate you guys all sharing your stories. So I feel like it's a real connection.
I will actually do that though, Finn, because something that strikes me about you specifically, and this has been chats on this podcast, but also when I went and visited you in Cordoba, I'm intensely aware that I think... I don't know, it's a weird way of saying it. Maybe I'm just trying to tie it into the topic too hard. But you seem to be a man that's living without regrets. And I don't know if that's part of the reason or just another piece of wisdom you've picked up along the way. But
yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? But I think it's part of it, isn't it? It's like, well, you've done what you've done, and you've got this time left. Just go and do what you want to do. All right, just try and do the best. Do you know what I mean?
Have you
raise your family
ever
or
visited
do what you
Finn
love?
in Cordoba?
Yeah, Moraine came as well for a while.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Moraine? I saw Finn living his best life, and I was like, this is a person who's I almost feel like most of us are living unintentionally, or you just sort of drift through the best-ish decision at the time. And I just remember looking around at it wasn't. I didn't feel like it was even my life in Cordoba. I felt like I was visiting Finn's life. And I was like, this is exactly... I think I remember the moment. Yeah, right, yeah. I remember saying to you, dude, you're just this is where, he's just living his best life. And I'm sure there's not every moment like that.
No.
But I don't know.
You know what it is? It's finding like a project that's meaningful for you. Whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that music festival and your friends there, I very much felt like that is the life you had chosen and intentionally moved towards. And I'd be interested
really lucky
whether
it's
focusing on your imminent death was part of the urgency that made you make such good decisions. Because my God, the few times I've seen you recently, you've been living, man.
But I think that's part of it. But I also had this weird thing I was going to say earlier. I had this sensation maybe like from about 10 years ago to about 3 years ago. So maybe for about 7 years that like I just knew I was going to die young. That's a weird feeling, right? It wasn't like a, oh no, do you know, it wasn't like a worry or an anxiety. I just had this sensation. You know, when you kind of just know something, but you know why? There's no evidence, but you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. So I had this feeling that like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to die like when I'm like 40, right? So then I was thinking like, okay, probably not, but like I kind of knew it in the back of my mind. And I don't know why that is. Maybe I am going to die when I'm 40 or 30 something or whatever. Probably not. But my point, I was just going to finish that point, was just that then I thought, well, if that is true, what do I want to do? Do you know what I mean? Because it changes. If you imagine if you're going to die in 5 or 10 years, you'd probably live your life in a bit of a different way, right? All of us would. Even me now, probably. If I said, I've got 5 years left, what am I going to do? So I think that way of thinking, does impact the decisions that you make to some extent. Yeah. And also, I'm just really lucky to have met a bunch of people who had the shared vision that I did about, you know, getting involved in this musical project. So luck as well, a big part of it.
Need a government project or funding, people going to see fortune tellers telling them that you got 3 years left of your life. Just
increase well-being rapidly. Yeah.
No, I changed it. That's a very, very fascinating, because
by the way, that feeling now has disappeared, which is weird, right? And it wasn't something that was like depressing or I was anxious about at all, but it was just there. And then like, maybe like 3-4 years ago, it just kind of, it stopped now. It's just so weird. It's hard to explain.
You were saying, Toby.
Well,
yeah, go on.
So like when up until 2015, I was living kind of a life of like zero. I mean, maybe some subconscious regrets, but I was living quite sort of a blessed, carefree life, and it was the death of my brother which really, I don't know. But first of all, I mean, it triggered quite a severe depression, but it really kind of made me more apprehensive about living. It's that kind of knowledge that things aren't always just going to work out. Sometimes people just die, or you could also die. Like that kind of realized that I could also die. And that like my sort of lifestyle of who gives a shit, it's not a realistic approach to living. Obviously, I mean, I've worked through depression, but I'm still far more grounded as a person than I was prior to my brother's death. I'm a lot more serious, I suppose. It kind of, it took away a lot of kind of the. It's difficult to explain, but I had a very kind of a careless approach to living, which that stripped away. Obviously,
do you think that you could say that's kind of a death that happened in your sort of psyche or personality in some sense, or stage of your life?
It definitely changed me as a person. Like there's a huge fundamental shift in my personality.
I mean, serious wouldn't be one of the top 3 adjectives people would use to describe Toby. But it's interesting because, you know, it's often not as clean as I described wisdom passed on from the now dead to the living. Sometimes the lesson is, it's not always positive, right? It's not always like, oh, I'm going to try and live more like that person. Either way, just the fact that it's finite has its own meaning, right? God damn, I really do think we're doing a podcast when we should be having therapy.
Yeah.
Why not both?
This is the therapy.
I mean, so far, it's some very good advice. Contemplate mortality and do DMT.
Yeah. I think with those two things,
that is pretty much what my psychologist told me. So
please let us know how it was in the comment section.
And talk to people about death.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean,
and I think you end up having quite a good connection with people. I tend to find, even though it's a difficult topic, it's hard, but it's rewarding.
Yeah. But no, essentially, talk to people about death. I think that's very, very good advice.
There's a movement called Death Positive Movement, and it's trying to do this to try and unmake death a taboo.
Are you sure it's not just like a necrophilia?
Some weird cult, like no, it's
like an Ambler, but for necrophiles.
We killed him again.
You got me. It's the kind of thing that you think, oh, I shouldn't laugh at that, but that makes you want to laugh more, doesn't it?
No, it's really fascinating how everyone has like different perspectives as well. I genuinely thought that everyone vaguely shared my views that death is terrifying, but apparently not.
Then again, there's maybe this one element of like that maybe it'd be interesting to talk about finally, which is like getting over death. And this whole idea of like moving on, which I found really difficult always, especially with my friend who died when he was young. That was very hard to deal with, like why and how and what's going on and how do you get beyond that. And I was talking to my neighbor, who there was like a old couple who grew up with us. They had 3 kids, a bit older than me. The oldest one was schizophrenic and passed away, and she's in fact a psychotherapist. An existential psychotherapist, and really interesting. She said that maybe you never get over things. Maybe just that sort of, well, you'll get over it one day, it'll be okay. It's just a bit of a myth that people kind of say, and that maybe you just have to kind of, it affects you. Like for example, Toby, you mentioned that it profoundly changed who you were. I think death can profoundly change us, and then we just have to kind of adjust to that new way of being and that new kind of knowledge in a sense of like what life can be. And I just don't know whether this sort of like you'll get over it eventually, whether that's really true. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
It's probably not the death itself, it's probably just the trauma, which I mean, as I said, like we were discussing like different types of deaths. It's the kind of the acceptable one, the old people passing away, and then there's the sudden shocking ones. I think it's literally the trauma. It fucks with the brain, and I don't think there's anything sort of magical about death itself, more just of how it affects the brain in relation to the manner of it. I don't know.
Any other thoughts, Marion, Chris?
I mean, so there's been people I've been very, very close to who, for whatever reason, I will never talk to again. And there'll never be that love or friendship or bond or communication again. That feels very final and tragic in its own way. But I agree that the point isn't the finality. And I've come up with examples where the fact that it's final is a blessing, right? Like, even if it's not all about high score, long life, like if you feel someone's lived an okay life, like if Finn died at 40, I'd be very sad. But I do think part of my main fear of death isn't about the moment of death. It's about a wasted life, wasted opportunity. I had some really comforting things from my grandma on my other side, who I wasn't particularly close with. And my cousin, who was very close with her, said, look, like, regret's obvious. Sure, you could have spent more time with her, but she always loved you and you always loved her, and you both had your own busy lives, and, that's okay. Like, in order to fix that, you would have had to spend a lot more time with a grandparent you weren't particularly close with. The fix would have been weird. I really do think that people are going to keep dying on us, and some we're very poorly prepared to take and handle. The big thing I've learned from this conversation is that we're not alone in that. And I'm probably, feeling this for someone my age. I'm surprisingly naive and inexperienced, both dealing with and talking about death. But the thing I'm facing at the moment is the desire to feel like I'm living a life that was worth living. And if that happens to me, both personally not feeling, oh my God, I wasted so much time doing stupid things.
Also, you got to have fun, though. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that's the funny thing, though. Like, I don't spend a lot of time having fun. I do spend a lot of time working. I'm kind of okay with that. No, I challenge you, though, that imagine if you were going to die in 3 years. Like, yeah, you would live differently. Of course you would. But imagine if you spent 40 years living like you're only going to live 3 years. I've met those guys. They're not in a good shape. Like, it's not a good way to live, to have a 6-month plan and nothing else.
No, but it depends. I mean, I was talking 5 to 10 years. But,
but
I know, like, I get your point.
That's my point is that, like, sometimes it's okay not to be getting a high score at life. Like I think you can go too far the other way and be so obsessed with your legacy that you're like, it's okay. Just this year, I think more than any other, I'm getting quite good at the balance. I think partly it's just aging and mellowing. I'm having a better relationship with my family. It feels less intense because I used to see them once a year. Now it's once a week. And despite how we annoy each other, we're getting into a habit of getting along. And you know, being at boarding school from 11, when I saw my parents 7 weeks a year, there was enormous pressure to make those moments count. Right, like when I arrived at the airport, like everyone was on and it was showtime, and I do worry people are like the opposite of what I was trying to say about you, Finn. Like I think people that are so obsessed with their legacy, these weird billionaires, if your only aim in life is to get a Sims high score, because one day you can no longer clock up any more points, you're definitely missing the fucking point. Sometimes it's okay to live as if you've got another 40 years. Like, that's also a good, valid life.
I think the point is to do what you want to do, right?
Yeah, I think the point is to have a valid life, right? I think the tragedy is not in death, as you all well described. The tragedy is in life, right? The tragedy of death is that someone may have lived a tragically not sufficient life. So death is a manual for life. Death is life, right? We're beyond binary. Death and life part of the same thing. And what we want to do is we want to honor life, honor your own life, honor other people's lives, and I think that will make death easier.
Harumph.
Has anyone got any more loveliness for us?
That was a really beautiful sentiment.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we should end on that one.
Yeah, and I would, I'm not trying to get likes on Twitter. I genuinely think, because we've talked about such a serious topic, if anyone listening wants to reach out and share some of their stuff they're going through and just have a conversation, I'd hope you feel all of us would be very open and welcoming to that. So.
Absolutely. Like if any of the subjects have affected you, touched you, then reach out to Aaron, because he's the calmest one here.
Not Finn, he'll give you homework.
Which I will be doing that homework.
Yes. And if you reach out
so
to me,
will I. That's why it resents me.
whereas if you reach out to me, I'm just going to say it's capitalism sort. Which it is. Like your point about, the point about that fear that we're not living our full lives. It's very much premeditated on the fact that we live in a capitalist world where we believe that our lives are all based on how much value we are producing, and if we could just change the fundamental concept of what living is and not have it be about, surely it's about making money for our bosses, then I think we would all be a lot happier.
Yeah, but you still want your pyramid, and that's not about capitalism, bro.
Yeah, you're going to have to start a pretty big company.
You can build
some multinational corporation to build.
We'll have a lot of slaves. Or alien technology.
So 2 points there. First of all, capitalism wasn't even invented when they built the Egyptian pyramids. Secondly, they were employed artisans, they weren't slaves. Thirdly, you can have a mausoleum under communism. Look at Lenin. Maybe not the best example.
Exactly the example I was looking for. I don't even think I need to retort. So.
Any closing with some words, or is that it?
No, I think we had it. This is the nonsense that goes over the music. Does anyone have a song we can put over this one?